What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 16 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2024 CFL season. And we took a little stumble. Last week. It happens. Maybe we got a little too comfy in our chair. Took a little tumble. That's okay. It was not as bad as it could have been. By the end of the week, I was not feeling super pumped about what my results were looking like. And honestly, they looked a little bit better than I thought they were going to. But again, still not great. The hot streak is officially over. Only 3-5-1 on the picks last week, including going 0-2-1 straight up. Got none of the games correct straight up, which is very, very rare for me around these parts. 1-2 against the spread. I did get 2 of the 3 totals. So look, 3-5-1, it's obviously not great, obviously nowhere near where you want to be, especially on a short week like that. The short weeks are important, but it was not an absolute disaster. Neither was CFL Fantasy an absolute disaster last week. I did not crack 100 points, but in comparison to the rest of the game, I definitely made some progress and moved forward. 98 points in week 15 exactly. Has me inside the top 425 across the entirety of the game and just outside the top 60 in Derek Taylor's league. On the season, 1495.5 has me just outside the top 2300 overall and just outside the top 260 in Derek Taylor's league. So I did make some progress against the field. You always want to be over 100 points, and if I'd made a better captaincy decision, then I would have been making that move and been well up over 100 points, but didn't happen. That's okay. My MOP from last week is still Greg Bell, running back from the Hamilton Ticats. He put up 21.1 points. And again, if I'd have used my captaincy spot on him instead of, I believe, Cody Fajardo at quarterback, then I would have been up over 100 points. So again, I was right there, but made progress on the field. Still about 19 games over 500 as a whole on the season, 97, 78, and 2. And that moves us into the 4-game slate this week for week 16, which features the third meeting between the Hamilton Ticats and the Toronto Argos this season. This one happening in Toronto. We got the Saskatchewan Roughriders in Calgary taking on the Stampeders, the Montreal Alouettes in Ottawa taking on the REDBLACKS, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Edmonton Elks clash in Edmonton, both of those teams coming off a bye last week. Across the league over the last 30 days, home teams are almost back to 60% straight up. They're just a little bit below that over the last 30 days, but still sub 500 against the spread. So home teams are not automatically cashing in against the spread. I tell you who basically is, though, and that's the underdogs. The dogs are fully barking over the last 30 days, 12-5 against the spread, which includes 4-1 against the spread as a home dog. We have 3 such instances of home dogs this week. Be interesting to see how that plays itself out. It may officially be #take the points season. But let's start with that third battle of the QEW, the Hamilton Ticats in Toronto taking on the Argos. This will be the Argos' 5th straight game since their last bye, and despite allowing yet another multi-touchdown fourth quarter, which does usually sink them, the Ticats didn't just beat Ottawa last week, they beat up on the Ottawa REDBLACKS last week. A 29-6 lead in that game after the third quarter. Again, fourth quarter was what it was. It's been what it's been for the Ticats all season long. Greg Bell, I mentioned him a little bit ago, was my MOP in fantasy, touched the ball 17 times, turned it into 111 all-purpose yards, and added a rush touchdown late. That was really the play that sealed that game. And look, I have not often been able to praise the Hamilton Ticats on the defensive side of the football. They've given me very little reason to this season. But they had 3 interceptions in that game, part of 5 total turnovers against the Ottawa REDBLACKS. They also had multiple tackles that took place in Ottawa's backfield behind the line of scrimmage. That was as good a game on the defensive side of the ball as I've seen from the Ticats in 2024. They deserve their flowers. I'm giving them to them. On Toronto's side, the Argos are coming off a game where they absolutely clobbered the BC Lions, never trailing in that game at any point en route to what was a statement win. The Argos were dominant at the line of scrimmage in that game. 7 quarterback sacks on the triple tandem of BC Lions quarterbacks who saw action in this game, and they carried the ball for 165 yards rushing, which completely neutralized Nathan Rourke / Vernon Adams / the third guy whose name I'm now forgetting. And look, that may just be the formula to beating this BC Lions team. They completely neutralized the quarterback position no matter who was there. I mean, they possessed the ball for almost 40 minutes of that game, I believe. Completely limit the opportunities of the BC Lions and what can be a very high-powered offense. 165 yards rushing, like I said, for the Argos. 6 different Toronto Argos all saw carries in the run game, and all but one of them, I think, saw multiple carries. Chad Kelly, Kadeem Carey, Daniel Adeboboye, remember that name? McMahon saw multiple carries. Janarian Grant had a carry. Cameron Dukes, I believe, had multiple. And this kind of blended rushing attack is a new wrinkle in this Argos offense that I'm really interested to see whether they stick with or not, because I think it has some potential. This will be the Argos' 3rd kick at the can this season to start a game on time against the Hamilton Ticats and beat a team that they should beat. And I don't think I'm disrespecting the Ticats by saying they're a team the Toronto Argos should beat. If the Argos are still a top team in the East Division, they should be able to beat Hamilton. So this is going to be their 3rd chance to start a game on time and get a win over a team they should beat. Again, I'm very eager to see whether this blended rushing attack is something that they stick with, especially against what's been a pretty suspect run defense in Hamilton for most of this season. Give me the Toronto Argonauts in this matchup. Toronto gets the win at home over the Ticats. On the line, the Argos are laying -6.5 against the spread, and I just don't think I can lay those points on a team that has beaten the heavy favorite twice already this year. I know it's difficult to beat the same team 3 times, but then to ask me to lay 6.5 points, I understand they had an impressive showing last week, but that showing is not necessarily the norm for them, across the whole season. So 6.5 points, I don't think I can lay that. I'm going to take those points. It's a little stinky on a bad defense, but give me the +6.5 on Hamilton. It insulates against the upset, and I do think it's going to be a closer football game than that. Total in the game set at 53.5 points. I'm seeing shootout here. Give me the over on that point total. I'm looking at like a 31-27, and it may very well be the case that Hamilton scores a late touchdown in what would be considered garbage time to cover this number. But 6.5 is too many, but give me the over on that 53.5. 31-27 final. Argos win. Give me the +6.5 on Hamilton over the point total. Let's go to Calgary now, where the Stampeders are going to play host to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Riders coming into this game off of a bye from last week. And the Riders are seeking their first win since mid-July. It's no secret it has been a real stretch and a real suffering stretch for this Roughriders team. They're coming off of back-to-back 1-score losses over Labor Day weekend to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And while I'm not going to say this has been the sole reason for the lack of success lately, the Riders have failed to top 95 yards rushing as a team since week 9. So again, it's not the only reason they're losing. But when AJ Ouellette is not in the lineup, this team lacks an identity running the football. When AJO is out there, they have an identity running the ball. When he's not, they just don't. And it's not the only reason, but it's been a reason they've been struggling. On Calgary's side of things, the Stampeders utilized yet another slow start from the Montreal Alouettes, these guys, hanging on down the stretch to collect a 19-19 tie, the second tie of the CFL season, despite being outscored 19-9 after the first quarter. And 6 of those 9 points for Calgary came in the overtime frame. Both of those teams, Calgary and Montreal, suffered from fumbleitis last week. They combined for 5 total fumbles, 2 giveaways each. So neither one of those teams could hold on to the football last week. And they also combined to suffer from a terrible lack of discipline, 18 penalties for 201 yards. The Stampeders' inefficiency in the red zone and 2 missed field goals should have sunk them. Should have sunk them in that game, but it didn't. They only went 1 for 4 in the red zone, and again, missed 2 field goals. That's the difference there. They could have won that game outright, not have to have it go to overtime, not have to do the overtime mini games, and really, anything can happen in overtime in the CFL. So those things should have sunk them, but it didn't. And even though I can criticize them for the mistakes, that is resiliency. Again, the Stamps did get lucky last week, but the Riders might be the league's unluckiest team. Calgary might be the league's unluckiest team, if not for Saskatchewan. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup here, because I think if you just look at the 2 rosters side by side, I think one of them is objectively better, and I think that's the Saskatchewan Roughriders. You do have to throw in an extra little wrinkle here. There may be some questionable field conditions. It's not supposed to be raining during the game, but they are supposed to get rain throughout the day leading up to the game. So who knows? There could be some suspect field conditions, might, tend to keep the score down a little bit, at least theoretically. I think this is a coin flip football game. I really do. If the game was in Saskatchewan, I'd be all over the Riders. It's not. Game's in Calgary. And in what I think is a coin flip game, I'm going to lean on the home dog here. And I know I've been saying it for weeks. Oh, you can't win with a defense this bad. You can't win with a defense this bad. Saskatchewan's defense has not been much better lately. In fact, I would say they've been about the same, at least from an efficiency perspective. I'm going to take the Calgary Stampeders here. They're a couple-point dog at home. Let's have that dog go ahead and bark. So let's take the Calgary Stampeders to beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders at home in Calgary, even though the Riders are coming in off the bye. So like I say, Stamps are plus 2.5 in this game. I like them to win. Give me the plus 2.5. Total in the game is 51. I actually think I'm going to go over on it. Again, 2 defenses that are wildly inefficient lately. So I think there's enough firepower on both sides here to kind of run the score up a little bit. I'm going to go like a 30-24. 30-24 in favor of the Stamps, who win, cover, and give me the over on the points. Ottawa is our next stop, where the defending champion Montreal Alouettes are in town. The Alouettes being on the other side of that 19-19 tie from last week. The Alouettes allowing double-digit points in the first quarter in back-to-back games and trail at halftime for the 3rd time in their last 4 games, but still managed to salvage a tie out of that game by kicking a last-second field goal in regulation to send it to the overtime minigames. That's how tight this was for the Alouettes, and it's a concern. Again, this is just not a team that has been starting on time over the last few weeks, and I know that they are feeling the absence of Tyson Philpott. It was announced that Tyson Philpott, I believe, is done for the season, so they're not going to have him the rest of the way. Obviously, he was such a hero in the playoffs last year. You're going to have to figure out life without him. And primarily, it's Cody Fajardo that's going to have to figure out life without him. I need to see more from Fajardo post-injury. He's had 3 starts now since he's come back. He's completing 70% of his passes. There's no problem with that at all. Only throwing for about 260 a game, which is something. It's not bad. It's not incredible, but it's also not bad. Only 3 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. So it's low event, but without your biggest weapon, at least in the receiving game, the quarterback needs to take on more. And I don't think he's been a particularly effective rusher since he's come back from injury either. He does have a rush touchdown. I need to see more from the quarterback position, and by God, start the game on time. For Ottawa last week, they dropped a game that I certainly thought they were going to win handily against the Hamilton Ticats. The comeback was on for the REDBLACKS for sure late in that game before that back-breaking touchdown by Greg Bell, I think in the last 4 minutes or something like that. They spotted Hamilton a 21-6 lead at halftime. Drew Brown was benched in this game for Jeremiah Masoli. However, Coach Dice has already come out and said Drew Brown's the guy this week. And I mean, we talked about it coming into the show last week. Ottawa has completely flipped the script on how they play football, but it's more than that. This defense is struggling mightily right now, having allowed 27 or more points in 5 straight games. And that's even with 11 takeaways on the defensive side. Between interceptions, fumble recoveries, they've taken the ball away from the opposition 11 times in 5 games. And they're still giving up 27 points a game. That's how bad this defense, or no, at least 27 points a game. That's how bad this defense is struggling right now. One area where they found some stability is in the run game. And of course, they very publicly cut ties with Raquel Armstead a few weeks back, despite the fact that he was their leading rusher. It's Kalen LeBourne. Over the last couple of weeks, has really stabilized that run game. He's carried the ball 23 times, 131 yards rushing, and a rush touchdown, has added 39 yards on 9 receptions, so he's been able to kind of stabilize that run and short yardage game for the REDBLACKS. Unfortunately, he doesn't play defense. I know I said this about them last week, but this has to be the get-right spot for the Owls. It has to be this game. There is no get them next time. It's a couple of losses in a row now, I believe. They haven't looked great over the last few. This needs to be a statement game for the Montreal Alouettes. It's their second straight opportunity against a struggling defense. And they've got a significant rest advantage coming into this game. I think this will only be their 3rd straight. They had a bye a couple of weeks ago. Ottawa's coming in. This is going to be their 7th straight game? Is that what we said earlier? We are trying to find that information. Yeah, 7th straight game. It is back-to-back road games for the Alouettes, but this is one they cannot afford to let slip away. I'm on the Alouettes heavy in this one. I think they roll. So, Montreal wins this game, I believe, handily. Against the spread, Montreal's laying -2.5 here as a road favorite. I know the home dogs have been barking lately, but 2.5 points. I like the Alouettes to win. Small price to pay. Let's lay those points. Total in the game set at 49.5 points. I have this one going over. I think Montreal gets into the 30s here. I think they need to. Let's go 31-23, something like that. Still think it's going to be a competitive football game, but let's take Montreal to win this one. Owls win. Owls cover the -2.5. Give me the over on the points. And our last game is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Edmonton taking on the Elks. Both teams coming in off the bye. Not only are the Bombers and Elks coming into this game off of byes, they're coming in off of byes after wins in Week 14. Both of these teams have been very, very impressive lately. And not only do I think this is the game of the week, I think it's a true testament to just how unpredictable this friggin' league is. So, right now, as it stands, would anybody be surprised if this was the West Final? After watching the last 4, 5, 6 weeks of the CFL, I don't think anybody would be surprised if this was the West Final. And it's so baffling because after Week 8, these two teams were a combined 2-13. These two teams were hot garbage early in the season. And now Winnipeg is atop of the board in the West. Edmonton is 1 point out of the playoff picture. Saski's been struggling. I don't think anybody would be shocked if ultimately this was the West Final, and look at where both those teams came from. Crazy. These are also arguably the two most efficient teams in the CFL over the last month or so. The offenses are basically a wash, 12.6 to 12.8, so those two are essentially the same. And the Elks defense has been the #1 most efficient defense in the CFL over their last 4 games. A D-efficiency score of 21, which is very, very high and very, very elite company, like over the years that I've been tracking this. So their defense is playing great. Both of these offenses are playing incredible. Again, I think this is objectively the most exciting game of the week, and Trey Ford is the starting quarterback this week. I don't even need to sell this game any harder. This is the game that's going to prove whether the Elks are for real or not. This is the litmus test. And look, Winnipeg's been the litmus test for the last half decade, at least in this league. This is the litmus test for the Edmonton Elks this week. I cannot wait. It has to be the last game of the week, because of course it does, but I cannot wait for this game. So, I do like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here in Edmonton to get the win over the Elks, but this is a very marginal game, and I'm going to do what's probably a dumb thing. I'm going to hedge. The Elks are taking +3 here as a home dog. I'm going to insulate against a very realistic Elks win. Like, the Elks upset is more than alive here based on how they've been playing over the last month. So I'm going to insulate. I'm going to take Winnipeg to win, but I like Edmonton plus the 3 points. Total in the game set at 49.5. I think it's the only under of the week. We're basically in over season here, but I think this is the one game that ultimately does stay under that point total. I'm going to go a 24-23 final. 24-23, incredible football game. Bombers win, but Elks cover the +3 in a game that stays under the 49.5 point total, and I can't wait for it. So, CFL Fantasy Game has not unlocked yet for this week, but to give you an idea of where I'm probably going to be heading, at the quarterback position, the quarterback position here is going to be tough. I can't trust anybody in Ottawa. Trust Cody Fajardo less than I did a couple of weeks ago. Tough to trust Jake Mayer, but I think his team's going to go for over 30. It might be a Chad Kelly week, to be perfectly honest. It might be another Chad Kelly week here in fantasy at the quarterback position. I'm going to be stacking myself with Riders and Stampeders and Ticats and Argos. And I'm going to try, probably Walter Fletcher at running back as well. Because again, he just continues and stays very, very consistent. I think that's probably the direction I'm going to wind up going in. On the defensive side, I might have to go Montreal again, but boy, defense is going to be tough this week. Defense is going to be an absolute gamble. I might just, if the Lions are the least expensive defense, they don't actually play this week, I may just do that to save the money. It's very tough. It's the equivalent of playing no defense in CFL in this format. So there's a lot of different directions you can go in fantasy this week. I think it's going to be a very high scoring week. So, got to be on point. Those are the picks. That's the show for you, folks. We're going to go over the picks here one more time. I've got the Toronto Argos beating the Hamilton Ticats 31-27 in Toronto. Ticats cover +6.5 over the 53.5 point total. I got the Calgary Stampeders marginally upsetting the Saskatchewan Roughriders 30-24 in Calgary. Give me the +2.5 on the Stamps over the 51 point total. I got the Montreal Alouettes going to Ottawa and beating the REDBLACKS 31-23. Give me the -2.5 on Montreal over the 49.5 point total. And I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers going to Edmonton and beating the Elks barely 24-23 in the game of the week. Give me the +3 points on the hometown Elks and give me an under on the 49.5 point total. Thank you, as always, for joining me, folks. I know the NFL is in full swing. There's a few fewer of you the last couple of weeks, and I totally understand that. But for the folks that are here, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for continuing to ride with me. And we will see you again for Week 17 in the CFL. Just a few short weeks remaining before we're going to be staring down the barrel of the postseason.